Hey, it's Billy Bross from the Homebrew Academy, and in this video I'll show you how to properly adjust your barley crusher grain mill. Now you may have seen my review post on the barley crusher. If not, then check it out. I'll link to it below the video. But in short, I love this thing. It's been fantastic so far. So I want to show you how to adjust it. And when I say adjust, you're adjusting the gap between the roller mills that crush the grain. And so you might want to make a larger gap. That will give you a coarser crush, and that could be good if you're having trouble with stuck sparges, but you might sacrifice some efficiency. Or you could go the other way, make it a really small, tight gap, and that will give you better efficiency usually, but you might have trouble with stuck sparges. So it's really a balancing act, and there's no correct setting. It depends on you and your system, and that's why it's important to know how to adjust it. So things you're going to need, it's really simple, only two things. Phillips head screwdriver, and what this is a feeler gauge, and you can get this at any automotive shop. I got it for about $8 or $10 at Pep Boys, and it's really just a set of blades, and they fan out, and they're different thicknesses, and the thicknesses are written on the blades. And so you use this to measure the gap, and some people use, say, credit cards or debit cards to measure. I like to be more precise than that, so I recommend picking up the feeler gauge. So there's three main things you're going to tweak here. There are the screws on the back, 1, 2. You're going to loosen those, which will allow you to adjust the adjustment knobs. There's one there and one there. And when you adjust those, you either increase or decrease the gap between the rollers right there. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is loosen up these screws on the back. You don't need to loosen them much to be able to adjust the adjustment knobs. So those are turning now. Then you have to pick a gap that you want, and a pretty common one is 38/1000ths of an inch. So I'll set mine on 38. Now I'll do that with the feeler gauge here. Now there's no exact width or blade for 38, but you can stack these things. So I know that if I take my first 6 blades right here and stack them together, that adds up to 38. So I'll use that to measure the gap. Now I found that it's best to measure in 3 areas, on the sides and in the middle. You don't want to have a smaller gap on one side and a larger one on the other. So I'll start on one side here, and I'll stick in the feeler gauge and then just tighten the adjustment knob until it gets pretty tight to the point where it's kind of clamping down on the gauge, but I can still pull it out. That's what I call done at that point. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. So I'll use this knob now. Loosen it up, tighten it so that it's tight, it's putting pressure on the gauge, but I can still pull it out, and then just make sure that the middle is okay also. So you can see I can put it in there, it'll slide through, but it's pretty tight. So after that, I will tighten up the screws on the back, and then it's a good idea to go back and actually double check after you do that, because I have had it happen where I've tightened the screws on the back and the gap's changed a little bit. So you want to make sure that stays the same. Alright, it's pretty simple, isn't it? So to recap, all you have to do is loosen the screws on the back, adjust the gap with the adjustment knobs, measuring the gap with the feeler gauge, get it to where you want it, measure on the left, the right, and the middle, tighten the screws on the back, and then measure again just to make sure that the gap is where you want it. And it's not a bad idea when you use this thing a lot to measure the gap every once in a while to make sure it stayed the same. So hope that helped. I'm Billy Bross from the Homebrew Academy. Subscribe to the YouTube channel to get more videos.